Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jason Williams, and I'm with my tag team partner, Blake Castetter, and we are the Sunday Funday guys. Blake, another week in the books. Not as crazy as previous weeks, but again, injuries, guys stepping up, guys not stepping up, a typical fantasy NFL weekend.
That's right, man. How's your team doing in your league of record? I don't think we've chatted on that very much.
Not very good. That's why
No.
we haven't chatted on it much. I'll be honest with you. When you have a high pick and you pick the likes of Tyreek Hill and Bijan Robinson, and you go wide receiver heavy. It hasn't really worked out like I thought it would. I'll be honest. And my friends will definitely let me know if I'm not telling the truth, which I am. I'm not doing as well as in my leagues that I thought I would, but I'm not panicking yet, and you never know. So, how about yourself?
I am 4-1, but I
Oh,
don't think I deserve to be 4-1.
well, it doesn't matter. If you deserve it, take it.
The points weren't there; the matchups were.
See, I've been having some bad matchups, and yeah, that's always the kiss of death. It's all about matchups in fantasy.
Yes, sir. All right, let's dig in. So we just finished up week 5, and some of the key takeaways and storylines heading into week 6 as a result of week 5. Rashee Rice finally got an answer about him, right?
Right.
Surgery. There was also a hamstring issue. So they're projecting 4 months. Maybe he's back for the fantasy Super Bowl,
Could
but
be.
that's a stretch.
I would agree. I think early on the diagnosis or the prognosis is good, but do you risk bringing him back, especially as young as he is, with the possibility of maybe re-injuring or getting hurt when you're already probably established at that point? Are you going to trade for a receiver? I mean, there's a lot of options that the Chiefs have at their disposal. So, in my opinion, I knowing what the team has around it and the coaching, I wouldn't be apt to bring him back so fast.
No, I agree. What do you think about Juju? So Juju was, he stepped up. He ran a lot of the same routes that Rice ran. So, your
Yeah.
underneath routes, not I want to say dink and dunk, but their ADOT was very short, and he was making plays with it after the fact. A lot of the analysts say top waiver wire ad this week, but that's a hard one because they're off this week, and the wide receiver market's kind of wild right now. So do you think that's worth a number 1 waiver spot? Do you think it's worth a start? Is he a stash? Do you think he continues this? I mean, what's your gut on it?
I don't. I think he's a stash because I don't think he's consistent enough. At least in my opinion, I haven't seen consistency all year now. Obviously, he's been behind a couple receivers, and Worthy, and also Rashee Rice. So I would stash him and then see what happens in a couple weeks. He could pay dividends, in the middle of the season towards the end. But I think right now it's too early to tell.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Derek Carr, oblique injury, out multiple weeks. One thing that I will point out here for those that play DFS, if Taysom Hill is back, that is a cheap tight end play that might get some quarterback, might get some running back options.
Yeah. I mean, the last time he played, I believe he had 2 touchdowns. So, and I think he's got a rib deal. So I'm not sure if he's coming back because ribs can be tricky. But if he is back, he's one I would definitely pick up. No question.
Mm-hmm. Tank Bigsby led the Jags backfield this past week. Cause for concern? Are we looking at a split backfield? Or was Tank's workload a result of a hurt shoulder from ETN?
I think I'm concerned. There's definitely some concern because the Jags look more explosive, and this is crazy to say with Tank Bigsby than they did with Travis Etienne. I actually have Tank Bigsby in a couple of my leagues. Just I stashed him for no other reason than just because I thought maybe Etienne may get injured or may get hurt at some point throughout the year, and it's paid dividends. I didn't play him last week, but he's definitely potentially a bye week filler moving forward.
Mm-hmm. He's possibly a flex starter this week.
Oh yeah.
He does have a very high broken tackle rate after first contact.
He's a tank.
And explosive run rate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kirk Cousins got Atlanta's offense moving, didn't he?
He did.
40-plus points on his own. You think Mooney start worthy moving forward?
Start worthy?
Yeah.
Not yet. I think Cousins spreads the ball around to a lot of folks in that Atlanta offense. Obviously, Drake London. You got Moody. You got even Pitts, which is amazing. He stepped up finally. And then I forgot the gentleman's name, number 34. So he spreads the ball pretty good. Would I start Moody as a flex, maybe, but nothing more than that.
It's fair.
Yep.
Nico Collins put on the IR with a hammy injury. What do we do with Tank Dell?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think you got to wait at least a week to see how it all shakes out with Houston. Tank is probably going to get some more play in terms of production, but to what extent would that look like? Does Schultz become a factor? Do they do something more with the running backs? It's kind of a hodgepodge of different players with Houston. Obviously, Nico's the number one guy, and then there's a big drop off after that.
All right, let's move on to the Jets. Firing their head coach. So everyone in Fantasyland's wondering, how is an interim head coach that's a DC going to affect the offense?
Well, he's not, because he's not going to be running the offense. It's going to be Hackett. I mean, let's be honest. That's why Rodgers came to the Jets, because of Nathaniel Hackett. So this is only a move to make him the figurehead. If you know anything about football and how coaching works, in the pros, does the head coach really do a lot? If he's calling the offense or defense, he does. If he's not doing either, all of that falls on the coordinators, and the coordinators do most of the work. So I would say the DC being head coach is nothing more than saying, okay, hey, we're giving you this position, but obviously let Nathaniel Hackett run the offense.
And then Joe Flacco is ridiculous. He's 39 years old, threw for 359 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. That's 6 games in a row, Jason, with 300 or more yards and multiple touchdowns dating all the way back to last season.
I want to know what Joe Flacco's eating and drinking, because he is playing not like a 39-year-old. He's playing like a 29-year-old. He's showing flashes of that Super Bowl year with the Ravens where he got all that money. I mean, he's, again, like, if you're the Colts, I get that Anthony Richards is your guy, but man, you're in a predicament. You really are.
I mean, Flacco's, they're playing well.
Right. Just like the Browns were, and just like the Jets were. Like, he's that guy. He's the guy that just muddies up the water when it comes to the quarterbacks that you drafted are young. And all these guys are like, damn it, Joe, not again. And he comes out and he wins games. So at that point, what do you do? Like, when you bring Richardson back and you start losing again, you don't think those Colts fans are going to be like, well, wait a minute. We're winning with Joe Flacco, and now Anthony's back in, and, we're still not doing as well as we did before. So, but again, in terms of fantasy, everybody's stock goes up. Down, I mean, everybody's stock goes up.
I'm with you, and it's funny you say that, because I believe I mentioned a while back that the reason the Browns let Flacco go was because they were worried about the reaction if Watson came in and the Browns didn't win.
That's what it should have been.
Mm-hmm. Because
can you imagine if Flacco's still there? Deshaun Watson would not be playing.
No, he's done.
Right. And they didn't want to take that chance with that contract. That's why he's still playing. I mean, we all know that.
All right. So looking ahead to week 6, as we jump on into week 6, we got bye weeks upon us. Again, a large list of injuries throughout the NFL. So segment this week that we're adding in is a streaming segment, one where we can toss out some players that might be available, should be available on waiver wires. The ones that we picked out were 50% or less rostered.
Nice.
As of Tuesday night. So we're going to cover quarterbacks, a couple tight ends, and a couple defenses. Teams on bye this week. We've got the Chiefs, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Vikings. So looking ahead to quarterbacks, give me your top stream of the week at the quarterback position, Jason.
Oh, man, this is tough. If I'm picking out of this list, correct?
Yeah, it's what we put together. Which one do you like best?
I would say for this week, if we're talking about 1 week, I got to go with Danny Dimes. And then I can't believe I never thought I would say Daniel Jones' name more than once in a segment of the Sunday Funday Guys Fantasy Football Podcast, but I am, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But I'm rolling with Danny Dimes against the Cincinnati defense that is just god awful. Period.
All right. So Danny Dimes might have Malik Neighbors back. Bengals defense allowed a lot of touchdown passes, allowed the 5th most points to quarterbacks. Yeah. So 2 other quarterbacks you can consider. Kirk Cousins was 41% rostered. I'm not sure after waiver wires run that's going to be the case after putting up 40-plus points. But he's got Carolina allowing 11 passing touchdowns so far this season, 7th most points allowed to quarterbacks. You also got Caleb Williams going against the Jags, heading over to across the pond.
Yep.
They've allowed the most fantasy points to quarterback position at 26.5.
Wow. Interesting.
All right. What about tight end, Jason? Who are our streaming options suggestions this week?
Well, we got Cade Otton, who's the tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who's only 37% rostered, averaging 7 targets and 5 catches per game over the last 3 weeks. It has got a great fantasy schedule coming up. And next is Tyler Conklin, the tight end for the New York Jets. They play the Bills. He's 30% rostered, 8 and 9 targets the past 2 weeks, Blake. Who you got?
Man, I like Cade Otton just because I think it's a long-term play. And actually, I touch on Cade Otton a little bit later, but he does have a great fantasy schedule coming up. He has seen productivity and targets the past 3 weeks. If you need a tight end stream, he's a great option.
So listen, I have Cade Otton in one of my leagues. I drafted him, and the last 2 weeks he's been doing great. Like again, we're in the tight end position. It's been so few and far between. Like all you're looking for is just a little bit consistency. Like 2 weeks really isn't consistent, but when it comes to tight ends this year, it's 2 weeks in a row of consistent numbers. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't normally do a streaming option for the tight end position, but with the current state of tight ends this year, I felt like it was a good idea.
I agree 100%.
All right, the last group, defenses. So this quarterbacks and defenses and kickers are usually streamings. We don't believe in doing kickers in fantasy football, so quarterbacks and defenses, and we'll bonus in some tight ends. So
sure.
This week's defense, my pick of the week, I like the Chargers against the Broncos and Bo Nix.
Okay. If I'm going with that, I am out of the choices. I'm saying I like the Bucs versus New Orleans with no Derek Carr. Spencer Rattler, I think, gets to start. Watched him a lot in college. He was at Oklahoma, and he was supposed to be this Heisman candidate. Ended up transferring to South Carolina, not doing as well. Caleb Williams goes to Oklahoma, USC, on and on and on. A lot of transferring to quarterbacks around there. But long story short, I actually think if you're a bet person, you might want to throw some money at the Bucs scoring the defensive touchdowns because Spencer has a propensity to throw it to the other team. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it did happen, I wouldn't be shocked.
All right, our third option is the Texans against the Patriots. So Patriots offense just really hasn't gotten moving yet. As a result, or as such, they are starting Drake May this week. So opportunity to get in while a rookie is figuring out the offense.
True, but if you go with our rules of Survivor, this may be one of those games that maybe you might want to watch out for. Just saying.
Right.
Just saying.
All right. Next, we got our start sit of the week for week 6.
Yes. You know what? I'm going to start it off. I'm back on the Danny Dimes kick. I am starting, yes, folks, Daniel Jones against the Cincinnati Bengals. Can't believe I'm saying this, but Danny Dimes is my start of the week. He's going against a Bengals team, which we've already noted, has already allowed 10 touchdown passes, tied for 28th in the league. If Malik Neighbors plays, watch out. Danny Dimes may have a career game Sunday night against the Bengals. By the way, in ESPN's rankings, Danny Dimes is rated higher than Dak, Josh Allen, and Jordan Love. I would never thought I would ever say that in fantasy ever.
Wow.
Right. Speechless. I get it. I looked it up. I was like, wait a minute. I had to hit refresh a couple of times. Like, this can't be right. Oh, it's right. Daniel Jones is rated higher than Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, and Jordan Love.
Well, speaking of Jordan Love, my start of the week. He struggled last week against the Rams defense. I mean, I don't think he broke 20 points. This week he does face the Cardinals. Now, I'll tell you, the Cardinals' pass defense has looked better than everyone expected coming into the season.
Right.
They are still, however, allowing the 10th most points to the quarterback position. This week, Jordan Love's back at home in Lambeau, and Love apparently plays really well at Lambeau because his last home game was against Minnesota, where he scored 36.2 fantasy points. In his last 5 games, he scored at least 21.5 fantasy points. Fire up Jordan Love this week.
Oh, ride the love train, huh?
Ride the love train. Now, you mentioned earlier and how Danny Dimes was ranked above Josh Allen. I'm going to go ahead and just piggy on that because I'm sitting Josh Allen this week.
What?
Sitting Josh Allen. Facing the number 2 ranked pass defense in the Jets. Yards allowed and touchdowns, all right?
Okay.
They're only allowing 136 yards per game passing, averaging less than half a touchdown per game. Josh Allen is also struggling. I mean, we said that out of the gate. When we were doing our rankings episode, we both had Josh Allen down.
Yep.
He might have been better with Diggs. That's as crazy as it is to say. He has yet to catch his stride. I mean, last week he went 9 for 30 for 131 yards passing. Now, in his defense, he's been QB1 twice this season.
Right.
But the other 3 games he's played in, he's been outside of the top 24 quarterbacks. Now, he also left, for a little bit, but he also returned last week. So he might be banged up again this week, dealing with a little bit of an injury. I don't trust it. He's going up against a good pass defense. I say sit Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think the Bills have done Josh Allen a disservice by putting too much on his plate. And then Shakir did not play in the last game. I think that was a big deal because that seems to be his number 1 guy. You've got another rookie, a wide receiver who is starting to make some inroads, but he's still a rookie. So you're going to put everything on Josh Allen for the whole season. That's a lot for anybody to bear. So in terms of not starting him against the Jets defense, I can definitely see that.
Who's your sit of the week?
My sit of the week is Geno Smith. Now, he was my start of the week last week, and I was high on Geno. It's been a nice run for Geno. The 49ers defense this week, who's allowing 197 passing yards per game. And honestly, it's just a gut feeling. I'm not really feeling this matchup. I think he struggles against the Niners D, who should be pretty fired up after the performance in the second half against Arizona last week. They did not play well defensively against the Cardinals last week in the second half.
I'm in a second Survivor League, Jason, just a small little pool with a couple of the guys that I know.
Yep.
And we're down to 3 of us. And so it's become a text message thread. And all of a sudden, I got a message right after Seattle lost, because I picked Seattle, that all 3 of us are still alive. And I was like, no, Seattle lost. I'm out.
Yeah.
The other 2 picked San Francisco.
Oh,
I literally had turned the game off and stopped watching when it was like 23-10 or something.
Exactly. Any given Sunday, man. In NFL, you can't turn. I mean, a lot of people probably turn off the Bengals-Ravens game, and look what happened to that game. But it's this year. It seems like more than ever, it's so much parity, and games are coming down to the wire. I'm watching the Red Zone channel, and usually there's like 2 or 3 games that are blowouts. Like, all these games are like within 1 score of each other, it seems like it every week. So, again, you never know. If you win a survivor pool this year, you would have earned it. No question. You would have earned it.
Or you had a lot of entries and you got some luck on your side.
Right. Or you forked over a lot of dough to have a lot of entries to get that luck on your side.
That's right. All right, let's move on to running back. So you got, Jay?
I got Bijan. Now, Blake, remember what we said last week about Mr. Kyle Pitts? It was either now or never.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am saying the same thing about Bijan Robinson. Like, come on, man. It is now or never. You were a top 5 pick, top 2 or 3 running back, and he has not showed up or showed out in any game this year. So this week they're playing the Panthers. Let me repeat that, folks. They're playing the Panthers, who have allowed 9 rushing touchdowns to running backs this year. Bijan Now or never, buddy.
I mean, I don't
So
know where he's
frustrating.
been, dude.
Yeah.
He was
I
like the highest rated running back coming out of college in a long time.
yeah, he was Saquon.
Yeah.
Highly rated. Yeah.
And he just has not done much. I mean, I want to attribute it to the offense, but it's time to show up, Bijan, and earn that first round capital.
It is. It is.
My start of the week is Chase Brown. I've said it from the beginning. Invest in split backfields during my rankings episode. Now Brown, in my opinion, is the back to own. He is freaking explosive. He's done a lot with his touches. Zach Moss dealing with an ankle injury, did not practice today, Wednesday. He's got the Giants this week. Not a solid matchup on paper, but I think with how Chase Brown is produced with the touches he's been given, I think he's going to pay off with a start. The past 2 weeks, he's had 15 plus touches. Each of those past 2 weeks, he's exceeded 16 PPR points.
Nice. Well, it's funny because ironically enough, in one of my leagues, I have Bijan and Chase starting this week. So we're gonna test this out right away. I'll let you know how that goes.
I'm gonna start Chase over my over Jerome Ford this week. I was gonna put Jerome Ford as my sit of the week this week.
Yeah.
Ended up going Rico Dowdle, but I am going to start Chase Brown over Jerome Ford.
Well, since you're on the sits, let's talk about Mr. Rico.
Well, I mean, he's number one running back in Dallas. I guessed wrong in that one. I thought Zeke might be the one to own and just touchdown capital. He has not gotten that at all. Dowdle did perform well the past 2 weeks. This week, he runs into a Lions defense, which is ranked number 3 in fewest points allowed to the running back position. I get that they've allowed a lot of points overall, but they've not allowed a lot of points to the running back position. Same defense that held Rachaad White and James Conner to a combined 6.8 PPR points.
Wow. This
week, Dowdle, in my opinion, flex worthy, but if you've got other options, I would definitely consider him.
That's interesting, that stat about Rachaad White and James Conner combined 6.8 points. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did I know that? In terms of my sit this week, Chuba Hubbard. Now, for the last several weeks, Chuba he's gaining some steam. I've actually started him a couple of my leagues myself. That's kind of where I am with the running back positions. That just sit with everybody. But for this week, he's playing a Falcons team who's allowing the fourth, fewest points per game to running backs. Chuba might be a flex at best, but if I was a bet man, I'd probably sit him this week against the Falcons.
Falcons defense is good.
Yeah, they are good against the run. So against the pass. You would think with the secondary they have, they would be a little bit better. But I think they're starting to put it together. So it's going to be tough for Chuba. I'm not saying he won't do well, but I don't think he'll duplicate the last several weeks like this week, like he's done before. He's had some really good showings at least the last 2 weeks against the Bengals and also I can believe against the Bears. So again, flex position maybe, but probably sitting him this week.
Cool. Let's move on to wide receivers. My start of the week this week is Zay Flowers. I'm going to touch on him again later in our Sunday 6-pack. But so far this season, in 3 of 5 games, Flowers has received double-digit target volume, including 12 targets last week in Cincinnati. This week, he's got the 30th ranked pass defense in Washington. They've allowed the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. 6 receivers have scored at least 15.5 PPR points in Washington's 5 games. Now, with an over-under 51.5 points, I'm going to guess this one's going to be high-flying and electric with a lot of points scored. And I'm willing to bet that Zay Flowers is the number 7 receiver to score 15.5 PPR points against Washington this year.
I feel like that's a comfortable start. And you gave a couple little nuggets in terms of betting. We'll get to my Sunday 6-pack, which involves the Commanders and the Ravens a little bit. But I think that's a great start this week. Zay Flowers definitely has produced for the Ravens. He's definitely their number 1 guy. Lamar seems to be in tune with him. Clearly, the tight ends are hit or miss with Baltimore. But it sounds like you can always count on Zay Flowers to come up with production in terms of receiver position. So
I was happy to see Mark Andrews get a catch this week.
Hey, listen, I don't know if I'm assuming you saw the game. Lamar had him wide open for a touchdown, but threw a duck pass. And Andrews had to like scoop. He caught it, but he had to scoop it up at the 2-yard line. And somebody from the Bengals tackled us. Like, you got to be kidding me! Like that's how his season's been right there. I'm like, easy touchdown. Like, would have walked in. There was nobody within 10 yards of him, and then Lamar throws kind of a dud, and he has to go get it. And then anyway, but yeah, I was happy to see Mark Andrews get on the board with one catch. Couple catches.
Yeah, he did have a couple in the end, but as soon as he caught that first one, I hit our social media with the Mark Andrews post.
Yes. Well, it's luckily for Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews isn't getting a lot of targets, but he is, and I think definitely a easy start this week. I'm thinking he could be a top 5 wideout this week.
There's potential for it because it's going to be a shootout and lots of passing.
Yep, no question. So my start for the week is DJ Moore. Not a lot of stats here, fanatics. I'm just riding a hot hand at wide receiver. DJ has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games, and I like this matchup against the Jaguars this week. And I think Caleb Williams is looking for more. I think they got that rapport, and he's getting settled in finally, meeting Caleb, and that's going to bode well for DJ Moore. So I like DJ Moore starting against the Jags this week.
As much as it pains me to say, I am almost to the point where I'm going to be ready to buy in on lots of Chicago players. I mean, Caleb Williams is starting to figure it out, maybe he's taking advantage of a softer portion of his schedule, but with what he's doing, he's got that offense moving.
Well, and they mentioned this on one of the shows. They're actually trying to run the ball. So, and I've actually gotten Swift. I thought he would have a better start to the year. Clearly he hasn't, but the last several weeks, looking at one of the hot hands at running back, it's DeAndre Swift. So we'll see if that continues against the Jags, but I like the offense as a whole. I think Caleb is getting settled in. I think Roan will start producing. And I think obviously DJ Moore and oh my goodness, I can't remember the other was Keenan Allen. I think they'll all start. Yeah,
no, Keenan Allen's droppable. He's done.
Okay. I'm not saying he's going to produce like a lot, but he'll be in there. Like, he's the older guy, so the younger guys got to step up. But DJ Moore is definitely my start of the week. Riding the hot hand with the Bears and their offense, so we'll see what happens on that front.
All right. Well, you talked about the hot front. What about the cool front?
Ooh, here's your boy. You're gonna like this. I am sitting Stephon Diggs. If Nico is out, which I believe he is on IR, Stephon becomes a de facto number 1 receiver for the Texans, and I believe his number 1 wide receiver days are over. I would sit him, even though ESPN has him ranked 10th overall at a receiver. I was surprising. So I think if he's the number 1 guy in Houston, I think he's going to struggle. And honestly, I would not start him this week if I'm looking at fantasy in terms of receiver position.
You also pointed out, don't they got New England this week, right?
Yep. Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Who's that corner?
There's another corner. Yep, Gonzalez. Yes, so be careful of that. And he's really, really, really good. He's not on the Mr. Surtain level, but he's just a shade lower. Like, he's a top 5 corner in the league, and if you're top 5, that means you're shutting people down. All
right, I like it. Speaking of shut down corners, this leads me to my sit. It's not Surtain.
Yeah,
and it was going to be L'Jarius Sneed until Michael Pittman said he might miss some time. So we're going to go over to Marshawn Lattimore with a Mike Evans sit of the week. They have that rivalry, dude. And they get after it and they go back and forth. Mike Evans has only had 1 boom game in his 12 matchups against Lattimore, where he went 7 for 147 and 1. Of those 12 games, he's only recorded more than 64 yards in 2 of them against Marshawn Lattimore. With Carr out, Tampa Bay is going to be favored. Might be a negative game script for the wide receiver 1 in Tampa Bay. I just can't imagine. I think Tampa's going to get up because New Orleans isn't going to be able to put the points up, and then they're just going to run the ball.
I would agree. And here's a good over-under. How many punches are going to be thrown during the game? How many are we thinking?
Well, I'm not sure, because Mike Evans came out either yesterday or today and said, that he needs to do better, and he acknowledged his portion. Maybe he's turning a leaf.
Listen, man, it's all well and good. You can say that whenever the reporters are putting cameras in your face, but when you get on that field and somebody pushes you, you're pushing back. And those two have a history. I mean, it's almost like pay-per-view worthy type history where they get after it. So I'm interested to see what the battle is this week between Lattimore and Evans. But great stats on Mike Evans. As much as we love him here, he does not show up when he's playing the Saints and Lattimore. So that'll be an interesting matchup, as it always is.
Now, the one asterisk to that whole stat line, I think he's been ejected from 3 games of the 12.
Right. So that should be the over-under, or the will he be ejected or not? Yes or no. There you go.
Prop bet.
That's a prop bet for sure.
I didn't look to see if that was there, but that would be funny if DraftKings had that.
Might have to check that out later. All right, let's get to the tight ends, folks. Blake, whoa, who you got at tight end this week?
I told you I was coming back with Cade Otton later in the show. Here we are.
You did.
So you took my Tucker Kraft, and you took my sit of the week in Dallas Goedert. So as I was doing these, I saw it. I'm like, this guy. So I had to dig deeper into my bag of tricks.
All right.
So Otton didn't have a great week last week. Didn't really show up. But this week should be different. Like I said, a matchup with New Orleans. They're not great against tight ends, but they're not bad. But Lattimore is going to be blanketing Evans. So it should free up targets to head Otton's way. That's my rhyme or reason. New Orleans has not allowed a tight end to score this year, but they have allowed 2 tight ends in 5 games to get 10 or more targets.
Mm-hmm.
So if Cade Otton can load up with targets, it's going to result in yards and points, even if he doesn't score.
Yeah, that's a sneaky play this week. I like, again, I have him starting on one of my teams, so and he's been productive the last 3 weeks. So I'm all on the Otton train right now for sure, no question.
But I do prefer your start of the week in that he seems to have figured out some chemistry with his QB.
Yeah, my start of the week is Tucker Kraft, and I was surprised it took so long. But it seems like now we're a month in the season, things are kind of settling down, and people kind of know their roles. In the beginning, I was wondering, I was like, man, I know he was part of the offense last year in terms of getting some targets and things like that, but he seemed to be non-existent for the first month, but he's been back the last 2 weeks. He's played 80% of the snaps over those 2 weeks. And when you're playing 80% of the snaps, that means more opportunities in that powerful and explosive Green Bay offense. So I like Tucker Kraft this week as my tight end start.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Love wasn't there for 2 of the weeks so far this season. So once Love came back the past 2 weeks, he's been on fire with him. So I like it.
Yep, I would agree.
I also love your sit of the week.
Ah, yes, my sit is Mr. Goddard. With A.J. Brown and the Slim Reaper coming back in the lineup, I think his target share is going to go down. Just throwing out a hunch with that with Hurts and getting the receivers back in the lineup. I don't know how you can get the ball to all 3 of them and then Saquon. So somebody's got to suffer. We know Saquon's getting the ball. And these 2 have been out for the last 2 to 3 weeks. You think Hurts is going to want to try to get to the ball? So I think with that being said, I think Mr. Goddard suffers in terms of targets. Plus, the Browns D only surrenders 184 yards passing a game. So a little bit of a tough matchup for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I would be sitting Dallas Goedert this week against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, so Goddard, he leads the NFL in target share at the tight end position at 28%. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he hasn't had the top 2 targets in their offense available the past 3 weeks, but that was my rhyme or reason as well. Those 2 coming back has to change. Go back to look at the first 2 weeks where Dallas Goedert was basically non-existent.
Exactly.
Speaking of returning, my sit of the week is David Njoku. He did not have an injury designation going into today's practice. Fresh off injury, he's going to return to a team that is struggling to produce on the offensive side of things. And his return does not come at a good time because the Browns are heading into Philly, and the Eagles have allowed the second fewest points to tight end position this season. 12 catches for 111 yards and 0 touchdowns. Plus, last year, I'm just not a believer in the connection between Njoku and Watson. Last year, we drafted him. He did not produce with Watson, but once Flacco came in, that's when Njoku started to go off. And then at the beginning of this season, before he got hurt, he wasn't really putting up big numbers with Watson again.
right? It's tough for me to understand when you have talent at certain positions why that talent doesn't get the ball or get targets. We're kind of like Pitts. Njoku's kind of the same thing. This guy's uber talented. We've seen what he can do when he gets the ball in his hands, and for some reason, Watson and him haven't connected. I mean, again, is it time for Jameis Winston to kind of resurrect his career with the Browns? Let's be honest. Like Deshaun Watson, man, he is a shell of his former self. I mean, he was Jane Daniels before Jane Daniels, was Jane Daniels. So I don't know what's going on with Deshaun. I think, as I said, I think it's a shell of his former self. Unfortunately, the Browns owe him mega amounts of money, so they're not going to send him. That would actually be caving into the fact that you made a huge mistake, and nobody wants to do that. Ownership, coaches, whatever. So, I mean, who are you playing with the Browns at all until you see some semblance of an offense, which they don't have any at this point in terms of fantasy?
They really don't.
No.
Staying in Philly, though, if we move on to survivors, my safe pick of the week is Philadelphia over Cleveland.
Smart man.
Philly's projected to win by 9 points, the spread, and it's a 78% win probability, which was shocking to me until I dug in a little bit deeper. I guess I'm still a believer in the Browns defense better than they are. Cleveland, they're just not looking like the team we expected them to be coming into 2024. Currently 1-4, just coming off a massive loss to Washington, where they allowed 34 points, and their offense only got 1 touchdown and 2 field goals. Philly's 2-2, coming off a bye, which they desperately needed to get healthy. This week, Lane Johnson, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown, as of today, Wednesday, are practicing. So my safe pick of the week is Philly at home over Cleveland.
That's a safe pick. Philly needs this win. I can't believe I'm saying this, but they got to keep up with the Commanders in the division. I mean, I can't believe I just said that, but I just did, folks. Yes, they have to keep up with the Commanders in the division and the Cowboys. So they need this win, so they cannot mess around at home against Cleveland. I mean, can you imagine if they lost to the Browns at the Link? Those fans would lose their freaking minds. That is not a good thing. That alone should scare the Eagles players straight in terms of getting this W and beating just beating down the Browns, because the Browns are a wounded duck. I mean, for some reason, they're not clicking, to your point. At least we knew what the defense could bring to the table. They don't even have that now, and the offense is just, bad. There's no other word to put it. I mean, they don't have any type of explosiveness. The line's not very good, which is a surprising thing because that's what they hung their hat on. Then the defense is not good. There's just a lot of problems in Cleveland. So I agree with you on your safe pick, Philly at home against the Cleveland Browns.
What about you? Where are you at on your safe pick this week?
And this is not necessarily a safe pick, but I'm just going off of what I see in the eye test. So I'm going with the Detroit Lions over the Dallas Cowboys. And for me, it's all about the matchups, just like we talked about early in the show. I don't believe the Cowboys match up well with the Lions and their elite offensive line and their elite running backs and skill players and the play action passing of Jared Goff. Even though the Cowboys D has played better over the last couple of weeks, the blueprint is out. Like we saw what Derrick Henry did with them. Meaning Detroit, have 2 running backs that can do the same thing. And you don't think Motor City Dan Campbell and the Lions offense is ready to run the ball down Cowboys' throats without Micah Parsons? So I think Detroit wins in a shootout over the Cowboys.
You reemphasize that shootout, Jason. Is there any particular reason you reemphasize that shootout?
Well, we might have some Sunday 6-pack action on that as well.
All right. So my caution pick of the week is Tampa Bay over New Orleans. Tampa Bay is favored by 3.5 with a 62.2% win probability. Derek Carr sidelined, right? So this should be a no-brainer, a layup, a home run.
Steal it.
Not if you follow our rules. Think twice. Derek Carr is out. Enter Spencer. Rule number 1, new quarterback. Division rivalry. Rule number 2. And Tampa Bay is on the road. Not crossing the country, so not quite rule number 3. We'll give it rule number 2.5. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. but still think twice about picking Tampa Bay over New Orleans.
Okay, is it likely to happen? Can you really say it? Probably not with the way the season's going. Like I'm thinking, like, listen, it can happen. Like when you said it could have happened, I'm thinking in my head, oh yeah, it can happen because every week something's happened and I didn't think would happen. So you're right. Should it happen? Probably not. But again, how many times have we said, nah, that can't happen over the past just 1 month? We've only been doing like 1 month and we've said, there's no way that's happening. All of a sudden, we're eating crow, so to speak, and that has happened. So I am not putting anything over these caution picks or these safe picks because honestly, right now it's just kind of a crapshoot because anybody can beat anybody on any given Sunday. And I know that's a cliche, but it certainly rings true in this NFL season so far.
I did, however, say the same exact thing about Andy Dalton's first game.
You did? Yes.
Is it going to happen? Probably not.
Right.
But it might.
It happened. See, again, you never know. You never know. Well, my caution pick, man, this one hurt, Blake. This is personal. So my caution pick is the Bengals over the Giants. And this one pains me. Simply put, fanatics, you can't trust the Bengals D or you can't trust Zach Taylor's play calling. Again, this one pains me. I would not be surprised if Danny Dimes and the Giants beat the Bengals on Sunday night. It seems like for me, this episode, I'm on the Danny Dimes train, and I never thought I would even want a ticket to that train. Clearly, I'm in the front seat of the train this week. So, caution pick, Bengals over the Giants in MetLife, Sunday Night Football. Be careful.
I like it. I think I'll touch on Danny Dimes here in a little bit myself.
Yes. So, I mean, you never know what the Bengals are going to bring to the table. And, the Giants are playing well. I give them credit. As much as I made fun of them and made fun of this and that, they are actually playing well. So I'll give them some credit. But it's going to be an interesting game. Will the Bengals do what they need to do and get a win? Or they let the Giants hang around, get confidence, and then and anything can happen at that point?
I'm not sure, Jason.
We'll find out.
But it's a risky pick.
It is a very risky pick. Risky.
I do have a question for you, though.
What's that, buddy?
What's the best way to get your Sunday started right, Jason?
Tastes so good when it hits your lips.
Sure does. Our Sunday six-pack of the week.
Sunday six-pack.
All right, so my first one was going to be Michael Pittman. Under receptions. Under yards. Going up against L'Jarius Sneed, who has been shut down as well this year. Shutting down DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, Romeo Doubs, and Tyreek Hill. Holding all of them to under 38 yards. But apparently Michael Pittman is out and is going to miss multiple weeks. So I went ahead and substituted for you all Zay Flowers over 4.5 receptions against Washington. I don't know how many layups are available on DraftKings. When I went in, I was looking at 6.5.
Yeah.
I was very pleasantly surprised to see 4.5. In 3 of his games so far this year, he's hit the over. In all 3 of those games, he's exceeded 10 targets. Like I mentioned earlier, he faces Washington, the 30th ranked pass defense.
Lay up.
Should be.
Question. Should be. 4.5 receptions? Come on, man.
4.5. If he gets double-digit targets and he can't catch 5 balls.
Oh, there's no way that can happen. If he gets over 10 targets, he's catching over 4.5. No question.
Well, he's been hit or miss. It's either like 3 or 4 targets or 11 or 12 or 13.
Yep, or a gang of targets. Yep, I agree. Yep. I've been on the Zay Flowers over-under reception deal for like the past month. I've been burned a couple of times, but I have, you do pretty good. But no, I think that's a safe assumption that Zay Flowers against that defense will definitely have over 4.5 receptions.
My next one is Christian Kirk, the longest reception over 19.5 yards. Now, this one was some digging. So he's covered this in 4 of 5 games so far this season. He's facing the Bears, who have a good pass defense as a whole, But Kirk plays out of the slot, so he's going to miss out on playing Jalen Johnson. Chicago runs zone defense at the 6th highest rate in the NFL so far this season. Against zone coverage, Christian Kirk has an ADOT of 18 yards. In 2 games so far this season, against zone-heavy teams, Kirk has recorded an 18-yard reception, a 24-yard reception, and a 61-yard reception.
Wow.
Heading over to Chicago's side of things, in their 5 games, they've allowed long receptions, the long reception of the game to the slot receiver being 11, 13, 21, 25, and 31. So the Bears have allowed 3 receivers in the slot position to cover that long reception number.
Man, you dug deep. I was like, where are you getting these stats from, bro?
Dude, it was a rabbit hole. I just kept going.
Man, you talk about a rabbit hole. I know how you climbed out of it, but you did. That's interesting. When I first saw that, I was like, really? Christian Kirk, 19 and a half yards? But, hey, the stats bear it out, so I can't argue with the numbers.
As I kept finding more, I just kept going. It was a deep rabbit hole.
You love it.
I do.
You love it. Yeah, I know you do. It's all good.
All right, last one. So Bengals against the Giants, over 48 points on DraftKings. I was on the over on Baltimore and the Bengals last week, just like you were. Thank you, Jason. I hit that one. Both offenses are humming. Neighbors set to return. Maybe Singletary. Tracy looked good in his starting debut. 129 yards on 18. Maybe they don't need Singletary.
He's got some juice.
He does.
Yeah.
Danny Dimes seems to have improved, having thrown multiple touchdown passes in 3 games so far this season. Bengals offense. Burrow leads the NFL in passing touchdowns with 12. He's also averaging career bests, passer rating of 113.6 and QBR of 73.6. So as much as everyone is ho-humming about the Bengals, it's not Burrow.
Nope.
But neither of their defenses are good. Bengals are 31st ranked scoring defense and will allow points to be scored. No questions asked. The Giants defense, however, is number 11 in points allowed, but I think the Bengals offense is good enough to exploit that.
Yeah, this is another one like last week. There's I just don't see the number holding up the under. Both offenses, as you said, are humming. The Bengals defense is, we don't need to go there. They're not very good. The Giants defense can be so-so. Their corners won't be able to stop Chase and T and UC Voss and the tight end. So heavy money on this. Definitely going to be a shootout.
Over. Push the button.
Over. Push it. Easy money. Easy money.
All right, what's your 3 this week?
Oh, so my 3 this week, I actually have I got a bonus.
Ooh,
So
I've
got 4, and it involves quarterbacks. So I'm going right to Baltimore and the Commanders game. I like the overs in rushing for both Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. Lamar is at 55.5, and Jaden Daniels is at 48.5. Now we know how dynamic these quarterbacks are, but we also know how these defenses have been struggling over the last couple of weeks, especially the Commanders. This game is featuring 2 quarterbacks, one that is the present and still young, meaning Lamar, and one who's the future at the position, meaning Jaden Daniels. So I would expect these two to put on a show for the fans. I'm taking the over in yardage rushing for both quarterbacks, which I'm not sure has ever been done in a football game. That would be an interesting stat to pull up if the overs have hit rushing-wise for each quarterback on both teams for that particular game.
Well, if you had thought of that in advance and given me a little notice, I could have looked it up for you. I'd have found it.
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't have found it. It's the reason I don't think it's ever happened, but we'll do some back end research on that and give you that stat next week if they cover. But I like 55.5 for Lamar, 48.5 for Jaden Daniels. Also, I like Josh Jacobs rushing yards over 65.5. Running backs seem to have get right games against the Cardinals D. Loving the fact that Josh Jacobs is at home at Lambeau and his number is only 65.5. I feel very confident that he can hit that number. So I'm taking Josh Jacobs in the over. And lastly, I think this over is a no-brainer. And again, I'm more skewed to the unders, but this one seemed like a no-brainer. You got Dallas and Detroit over 52.5 on FanDuel. They may have 52.5 or over 52.5 by halftime. The way these two defenses play, they do more breaking than bending, both defenses. So I would be shocked if this matchup wasn't over 52.5 points. I think that number is actually too low. I think it should be more in the high 50s than the low 50s.
I hadn't seen that one, but I like that one.
Oh yeah, I like the Bengals and the Giants, and this over too. Whew.
A lot of points this week, possibly scored in fantasy.
Potentially. Hopefully, you got the right guys.
That's right. All right, man. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. I do have one fun fact, as I've been trying to find for us weekly. I still don't like Najee Harris. I know I've said it, and I've said it, and I've said it for this whole last season and this year so far. He is the only player to have more than 70 touches this season and 0 touchdowns. You have any idea how many touches he has, Jason?
Oh, phew. Over 100.
96.
Okay, close enough. I'll take
96 touches and no touchdowns.
Wow. So with that, you know what that tells me, Blake? It tells me a couple of things. It tells me the fact that the Steelers have not opened up the offense to give him an opportunity to run the ball better, and teams are ganging up against the run. And again, I made this point in the first show, like their offensive line is not very good. Hence the reason they're going to struggle. And you've kind of seen it the last 2 weeks rear its ugly head, and they've gotten by because of their defense. But at some point, you're going to have to score points in this league to win games. They just haven't done enough the last 2 weeks to do that. And I'm not surprised by this stat at all, just because of the nature of the Steelers' offense. It's built to run, and you don't really have a good offensive line, and you don't have a quarterback that's consistent. Now, is Fields getting better? Yeah, now does Russ come back? Who knows? But that's an interesting stat, definitely.
Speaking of Pittsburgh, did you see that the snap share that George Pickens had this week?
I did.
Low.
No. Yep.
And Tomlin explained it as he wanted the offense to be more efficient on the snaps that he was in.
Huh.
I'm not sure I buy that.
That's a Tomlinism right there. Nobody knows what that means. He's the only one that knows what that means. And maybe our guy Josh Prey.
Josh Prey's right.
Yeah, he might be the only guy that can decipher Tomlin's language. But as I said before, and I hate to beat a dead horse, the Steelers' offense is just not very good. They don't have any game breakers, no dynamic plays. So they're always going to struggle in terms of creating offense. And when they needed to create offense is when they were down to the Colts. And we know how bad the Colts defense is, so that was easy. But if they get down 17-0, it's almost like being down, 24, 27-0. It's just tough for them to come back because that's not how they're built. They're built to get the lead, play good defense, sack the quarterback, win the game 17-14, 20-17. Any type of shootout, not good for the Steelers.
Agreed.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, that's going to be it for us. If you haven't joined us on Facebook, please do. Conversations are happening. We try and post good content over there. Also, follow us on YouTube. You can watch us live. You can see our ugly mugs live and in color. Yeah. And then finally, Spotify and Apple Podcast. If you would, leave us a review, a rating. All of it goes really far in helping others find us so we can help your league mates compete with you.
And share the episode. We want the more the merrier. I've been sharing episodes with folks that didn't necessarily know that I was a podcaster now. And that's freaked people out. Like, what? You're a podcaster? I was like, well, technically, yes, I am. So, Blake, if you haven't put that in your resume, please feel free to do that, just so you know.
I'll add it to my LinkedIn profile.
Well, Fanatics, that's a wrap for this episode of the Sunday Funday Guys Fantasy Football Podcast. And Fanatics, remember to make this Sunday your fun day. Sunday Funday Guys out.